My name is Paula Kluth, and I am a school teacher. I started my career as a teacher in K-12 in the field of special education. I taught, I was an inclusion facilitator, I was a co-teacher, classroom teacher, and then later in my career, I was a university professor teaching disability studies and inclusive education. And now I work with teachers who are in the field. I do in-service professional development, and I am an author and a researcher. So I write mostly about inclusive classroom, not only sort of strategies, but also lesson design and collaborative teaching and things like that. So my personal story or connection to the ADA is really, I think, backwards compared to other people. When in 1990, I'm 50 years old. So in 1990, I had just started student teaching, and I had just met my first friends with disabilities probably 2 years before. So I was pretty green to all of this. So I started working in public schools, and I think, oh, there's a lot of safeguards for people with disabilities, and we can, we have FAPE and schools can't say no. So I remember very distinctly when the ADA passed and it was such a big deal, I was kind of confused because, schools were sort of ahead of the game because of the government, the federal government, I should say. So I said 504 ID, at that time, PL 94, 142, those were the kinds of, my models of that, what the law could do. And I thought we already did it. So I just remember being a young teacher thinking, oh, there's more to do. I didn't realize that restaurants didn't have to, abide by some of these practices. I didn't understand that people face this kind of employment discrimination. So, so that was, it was both a sort of a shock to the system, and then it was also a new appreciation for what the public law had done for my profession. For me, the ADA has made a big difference. I mean, in ways that they're just too numerous to even share, but I want to kind of cheat and say three. One is that families could have a choice. And I think about over the years when a family, for any number of reasons that I've advocated for, really wanted a private school experience. They wanted their kids to go to their faith-based, school, and that the ADA has made that possible. You may not get the same protections that you would get, the whole range of protections that you would get in a public school, but that families could choose to go to a private school, and that their children would be able to have accommodations, and that they might be able to receive. I mean, again, it may not be exactly the same, but that that there was now a path for them to get possibly an interpreter or specialized materials or access to their medicines and those kinds of things. The second thing that I think about as far as the ADA making a difference in teaching is our teaching profession and getting us more teachers with disabilities. When to listen to Judy Heumann talk about everything that she had to go through to become a teacher, it just breaks your heart to think of not only what she went through, but it makes you just, fill with pride to know what she's done for us and how she has, opened up the field of education so that teachers, that we now have many teachers with physical disabilities and learning disabilities. And so we don't have enough. But that has been, I think, a big impact. And the third aspect of ADA making a big difference in education is universal design for learning. And this is a little bit of a step removed, maybe, if you will, because steps in general are what brought us to this, right? That if you don't know a lot about UDL or universal design for learning, this way of creating classrooms that are barrier-free comes out of the field of architecture, universal design. How do we design structures that don't have barriers? And if you follow the trajectory of universal design being popularized, comes right on the heels, of course, of the ADA, where we had to figure out how are we going to attend to this law and make things that are accessible and beautiful and user friendly. We have so much to thank, these advocates for, because now we are using the metaphor of structure to talk about learning. And now we've got classrooms where live captioning is typical, and if you're not using visuals, that's more unusual. And there's a box of fidgets somewhere in the classroom for all to use. Maybe not right now during this time, but in general, those are things that started with kids with disabilities, and now flexible seating is another one. So all of that, isn't it interesting, amazing to think that all we can trace that all the way back to people talking about real steps and true barriers. I could only pick one thing that I could change to create more access in the lives of people with disabilities. I would flip the formula that we use in public schools. Formula, I should put in air quotes. First of all, I don't want to pick one, but if I had to. And when I talk about the formula, what I mean is, yes, our laws have done a great service to us in getting a wider range of kids in. We have faith. We can't say no to to kids getting access to their education. But we are, not only have we not gone far enough, but in many ways it is disappointing where we are in 2020. As far as kids with a whole host of needs being able to get access to educational environments, extracurricular activities, and experiences with classmates and those kinds of things. So to flip the format would be, instead of having schools talk about inclusion as if it's up to us to kind of look at this child and say, okay, where in the school day can he come in? Should we do this for music? Should we do it for art? Should we do it for reading? Oh, maybe for math. And so often that's what inclusion has come to mean. And I would like to see this flipped, where instead of asking the question, when are we going to get him in, that we ask the question, why is she ever leaving? And so I think that energy is what we want to go into. And I think there's no time like the present. We are, I can't avoid a cliche here, but as we go back to this new normal, even if it's in our virtual environments, we have a chance to redesign what this looks like. And I hope that as students come back, we will think in very bold ways about placement. Okay, so what steps can we take? I am going to say 3 things: vote, vote, and vote. Actually, I'm going to back up and say we have to be politically involved in this. I mean, this is not a partisan issue. Think about who signed the ADA. George Bush signed the ADA. Who is responsible for, putting their John Hancock PL 94-142? Gerald Ford. John F. Kennedy was one of the first presidents ever to create, real supports for people with disabilities. So this has been a bipartisan effort, and it happens at all levels. We have to think about not just make sure that you're voting, although I do think we should vote with this kind of this energy at the centerpiece, but I also think being involved in the PTO is political. Just making sure that we understand what's happening in our own communities. The library board, I think, can be an incredibly powerful place to make an impact. So, not only just making sure that our voices are heard and that we're involved, but just being informed and understanding what those issues are locally, and then also what's happening from a national perspective. Because as we know from watching Crip Camp and from reading Judy Newman's new book and just listening to these interviews, I'm sure, even though the law isn't always enough, it is pretty incredible and we need it.